Hi, this is Josh with the Fun Times Guide, and I want to discuss the important matter of what makes a coin valuable. So, a lot of people ask me on the Fun Times Guide what their coins are worth. Oftentimes, Lincoln pennies are the coin I'm most commonly asked about, and for good reason. I mean, a lot of people have pennies in their change jars or the pocket change or in collections or albums kind of like this, and they'll want to know which ones are valuable. And I really enjoy answering questions like that because, first of all, Lincoln pennies are very close to my heart. They were the first coins I ever collected as a kid. And it's the Lincoln Cent series is one that I've always stayed very close to in my collecting endeavors. Even over the years as I've gotten other types of coins, I've always kept in touch with Lincoln pennies. So definitely, please keep all your questions coming about coins, especially those about Lincoln pennies. I'm always happy to help with those. So talking about the value of coins, what makes a coin worth what it's worth? How do you know if you've got a valuable coin? Basically, there are three key determinants that help to go into the value of a coin. And that is the supply versus demand, the issue of condition, the state of preservation that the coin is in, and finally, the absence or presence of errors and varieties. Now, one of the most common, or I should say rather the most popular examples of a coin, Lincoln penny, that is scarce and in high demand is the 1909 Svd Be Lincoln Cent, which you see here. Aside the 1909 VDB penny, the 1909 Svd Be Cent was struck at the San Francisco Mint, which has renders an S mint mark, and it exhibits the VDB initials of the coin's designer, Victor David Brenner. And in fact, you can see those initials on the reverse side of the coin, the tail side of the coin, right under, you can see here, right at the base of the coin, below the wheat stalks by the rim. So, supply and demand. There were 484,000 1909 VDB pennies made, and maybe 30 to 50,000 still exist today. So we're talking about millions of collectors, theoretically, both those who are active collectors versus those who collect coins on the side, vying for 30,000, maybe 09 Svd Be Lincoln Cents. So in that case, we've got a lot more demand than supply. And thus the value of that coin is quite high. Yes, there are many out there. You can have this coin for a price, but because it is so in demand, it's going to have a higher price. That's one thing to think about when it comes to looking for the value of your coin is you need to know how many examples are struck or how many exist to get some sense as to how common or uncommon your coin is. Now, the next matter of condition. So I've gotten many questions from people who come across common date coins, and the reader will oftentimes cite a very high price that they saw online for a similar piece of the same date, selling for thousands of dollars, and they want to know if their coin is also worth thousands of dollars. The unfortunate answer in virtually every case that I've come across so far is no, that coin is not worth thousands of dollars, at least the one you have, because the coin that is being referenced is in most cases a top quality example of that coin. And as you might surmise, top quality coins are very scarce. They're much harder to find than well-worn examples. Almost every date in the Lincoln Cent series, Jefferson Nickels, Washington Quarters, you name it, name the series, almost every date has a very expensive or valuable specimen out there because the top quality pieces are worth a lot of money. They're very scarce. Everybody wants a nice example of the coin, so they'll pay a lot of money to get a nice example. But in most cases, the coins you're going to find in pocket change are very well worn. And when it comes to the common dates, a well-worn example is unfortunately, not worth a lot of money. So when you come across, say, 1941 Lincoln Cent, which can be worth a few $1,000s in top condition, let's say MS67 or 68 with red coloration, yeah, you're talking about a coin worth $5,000 potentially. But most 41 pennies that you're going to find in circulation are well worn, and those are very common coins to begin with, so they're worth a few cents. Unfortunately, not worth a few $1,000s. Now, the next thing I want to discuss regarding what the value of your coin might be is in considering the absence or presence of errors and varieties. Now, what I have here is a 1955 doubled die Lincoln Cent, perhaps the most popular coin variety out there. And you can probably even see in this video the doubling in the date and in the inscription Liberty and in the motto In God We Trust. This is a very prominent double die. In fact, it's probably one of the most easily seen double dies out there. Many double dies require the use of a 3 to 5x magnifying glass or coin loop to really see the doubling very well. In this case, you can see it with the naked eye. And the most valuable double dies are the ones that you'll see with the naked eye. They don't require a lot of magnification to see the variety. A lot of folks will send in photos of coins where they see under 10 or even 20x magnification, maybe the hint of doubling. And unfortunately, in most cases, when they're showing me doubling, it's actually a case where the coin was not struck by a doubled die, but rather the coin itself was double struck or rather shifted during the striking, thus creating a doubling of the design. Those are not valuable errors. In fact, coins that shift during the striking process or were struck by aging dies or weak dies that will create the illusion of doubling are actually damaged coins, essentially, or defective coins, and not really worth anything over normal value. Double dies represent themselves in a very distinctive way, and I've discussed that in other articles that you can be able to check out online and learn about what makes a double die versus a machine doubled coin. But a 55 penny with no doubling or no double die is worth a few cents, whereas in this case here, a 55 double die Lincoln Cent, as this one here, is worth about $1,000. And again, it's because of the error of the variety, in this case, that this coin is worth a lot more than the 5 or 10 cents that a typical 55 pennies are worth. So we've covered the issues of supply and demand, of condition, of errors and varieties. Now, how do you know which pennies to look for? Yes, you can consider all those different determinants in looking for coins in your pocket change. In the case of pennies, I wrote an article some time ago that discusses or looks at the 43 pennies you want to hang on to that are worth much more than face value. And I go through the list here online, and you can check it out yourself at coins.thefuntimesguide.com/valuable-pennies. And this will give you some ideas to some of the coins you might be able to find in pocket change that are worth more than face value. Now, it's not to say that if you don't see the date that you have here, that your coin is not worth any money. It's just that in most cases, the coins that you're not listed on here are going to be found in well-worn condition. And in that situation, those pieces are worth only a few cents. But by all means, I love answering questions at the Fun Times Guide. And if you've got a coin you want to know more about and want to know what it's worth, please write to me at the Fun Times Guide in the message box or at the comments section down below, and I'll gladly answer your question. And there's a lot to learn about coins, obviously, and learning the values of coins is not always a very straightforward thing. But if you know what to look for and know what the factors are that go into determining the value of a coin, it can at least help get you going in the right direction. So again, this is Josh, the Fun Times Guide. I want to thank you for your time. I hope this video taught you a couple things about what to look for in the value of coins and how to tell if you got a valuable coin. And I hope you have a great day.